capitalize, if you want, not only from a monetary
or encourage,
point of view,
yeah.
well, look, we're not, what's the point of just connecting alums for the hell of connecting alums?
Right.
You got to have a purpose.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
I think what they're trying to do is have that purpose aligned with the purposes of the institution, as opposed to a social club or something like that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right,
In
yes.
other words, nobody really cares. MIT doesn't become any better because people are making friends out there. Right?
Or it may not even
Right.
appeal to some of the alums. I mean, I talked to one guy who said, I don't need to go, he was in Australia, I don't need to go to dinner with these people, I don't need a social event, right? He needs something that engages him, right?
Yeah, but I think MIT wants to benefit and mutually
Yes,
from the relationship he has.
Right.
Strongly, it's a strong relationship, or however strong the relationship is, let's put it that way.
that's right, yeah.
So I think that's
So that
really
makes
it.
sense
I mean, I don't
for
know.
you.
I don't know if these boxes mean anything, right?
They're just topics that
They're
at the
topics.
bar you might talk about.
They're the topics of the day.
Correct, and you may be working on them, you may
But
be
MIT
personally invested in them.
MIT's dealing with more fundamental, as an institution, is dealing with a more fundamental issue, is in creating an environment, an ecosystem, if you want to call it that,
Right.
not only within itself, but between itself and its alums.
Correct.
That's what I think the question
about.
really should be.
Okay.
How is it from MIT's perspective beneficial, and how is it beneficial from the perspective of people?
That is exactly right.
Oh.
Right, because nobody's going to do it if it's not in their interest as well, right?
Right.
So you've got to find that mutual ground. So I'm going to ask everyone just to pick one of theirs that they wrote and talk about why this popped up on your sheet or inspired you in any way. Who wants to go first?
You want us to just pick one?
Pick whatever you wrote in your bubbles. Tell me about one of the bubbles that you wrote. Yes, go ahead.
Sure. So I think, as I've spent a lot of time thinking about education lately because of my girls, that what MIT needs to continue to do is teach the students how to think. I've been thinking a lot lately about, and this is not because it's my area, all the jobs that are becoming automated, from manufacturing to driving to writing simple quarterly reports, right? Computers are going to do all of that. So the only jobs that are going to be left, when our girls are older, are jobs where you can think,
Right.
Because everything where you don't need to think is going to be done by a computer.
Right.
And so if what MIT needs to focus on at its core is teaching these kids how to think, so that they are prepared to contribute to the world where computers do everything that doesn't require thinking. Computers,
so
robots.
that's a really noble cause and an interesting cause. Do you see yourself personally engaging with that somehow?
So I think the way that the way that the alumni can help with that is, I think, by mentoring, and there's lots of ways through these online systems where I went in and created a profile and offered to mentor students. And so I think that's one way, and the other way, like somebody said, was by interviewing, by helping MIT find the kids that are open to that.
Can do that well, okay.
Yeah. Someone said resonating with me. This kid who's my best friend's nephew, but he's like my nephew. Knew him since the day he was born. Applied to MIT, wound up going to Stanford because he didn't get into MIT. When I
Poor
saw
kid.
him, he didn't belong. He didn't belong. He absolutely didn't belong. And I saw it, and clearly MIT saw it. And he'd actually spent a summer at MIT, and he still didn't get it before he applied. And he's perfect at Stanford.
And what was it that he didn't get?
So he's an electrical engineer. wants to do electrical engineering, like computer software type startups. That's exactly what my husband does, and he wanted to go to MIT to be an undergrad, which is exactly what I did. We had dinner at his house, and he had not a single question for either one of us. There was just, because he knew, like he'd been there and he knew it, and he had his little startup, which had a fatal flaw that I pointed out to him, and he blew me off. And like he was just this like conceited little.
No curiosity, it sounds like.
No, and
Mm-hmm.
it's fascinating to me that he didn't get in.
It was good he went to California because the failure is
He's
accepted.
from California. He's from the Bay Area. He's so Bay Area.
You can fail there and just start another one.
I had hoped he'd get into MIT and they'd beat it out of him, but he didn't. So Stanford will just encourage it. But as a Berkeley alum, I have a special hatred for Stanford. But no, I mean, it was really interesting to me that, like you know it when you see it, and he didn't have it, and I was no part of the admissions process, but clearly they agreed. And so, I think that's what we can continue to help the universities, to help them find the kids, because you know it when you see it.
Okay, another one, give me yours. One.
Well, my suggestion was to try to connect each of the alumni to these lofty goals and try and really work on the hooks to say, okay, which of these matters to you as a big picture objective. And try to drill down and say, this is how we're doing. And then you start to have a program that's accountable truly around these objectives.
So for you, what would that be?
I mean, in some sense, all of these can be interesting. I might have to see which. Well, I mean, I don't know anything about health, but they're just amazing. Lots of things that they can do. I'm saying to really not just state them as lofty objectives, but to talk about, but setting up objectives that you're accountable for, that you report on, so that if you finally set the hook in someone, you can they'll seek you out to continue finding, well, how are you doing on that? I'm really interested in your success. I'm just saying as a way of operating.
So yours could be, it's about problem solving in one of these areas, maybe applied to your local area.
Right, or you pick energy. I mean, that is a clean energy, man. There's a whole ecostructure of people out there who say, man, if you kept talking to me about clean energy and what MIT's doing, right, you'd be checking every month to find out who's doing what and what new ideas do they have, and should you keep in touch with them. And you think that'd be great, but MIT would be checking in every month.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So when I saw this, the first thing I was like, oh, well, if they want to engage me, they just want my money. Like, what other things would they want in order
to spell?
What other engagement would I be interested in other than just donating money?
Right.
I'm an entrepreneur. I don't have money.
Right.
I give the token amount every year to make them look good and help the Alumni Association meet their numbers.
Okay.
But, so in terms of, connecting you to better world topics, how do I want to be connected? I want to participate.
Yes.
So if students are working on, like maybe a student club is working on something, or maybe the university organizes some sort of X Prize or challenges, like, can I join a team? Why does it have to be students only? Because the students are going to be doomed to failure most of the time. They just don't have the experience and the connections and the, like, they may have, the professor, and that's great, but, so why not just open that up a little bit? I write apps. Most students do not. I'm happy to help contribute to innovation and entrepreneurship and try different things and be connected with, people who write, better apps than I do.
Right.
And, keep learning that way. That would be fun for everyone involved.
So it sounds like, you guys described this as a school that taught you to be hands-on and do things, and that's what engages you as opposed to your pocketbook and what you might be able to give that way. Anybody else have anything that they were excited about? And then we will move on. Yes?
I think similar, along the same line as Allison. For me, I think it's, like, for me, at least for my career, it's been a very iterative process, right? Every job that I took, it ended up being something in either a new industry or a new function or a new, even a promotion. It just kind of continued to challenge you. And so, back when I was going to school, I wouldn't have expected this to be my career, right? I would have thought that you finish your school, you get your education, you're ready to go to work, and you kind of get your seniority and move up in the world. But it's just kind of like everything I do, it's just become an iterative process, right? And so now going back to starting up, trying to start up a new company or start up something new, it's taking me back again. And so there's a lot of things I have to learn, right? I have to go back to learn how to code again. I have to go back to learn how to, and so I'm looking at classes, looking at things to do. And so I think engaging, for me to engage in, in MIT and students and all that, I mean, to me, it's just like, if there's a way for the alumni to just continually be able to go back and relearn, re-engage, sit back in classes with the students to, learn some of the fundamentals again. Without, I get these seminars that are like $5,000 and $10,000, for a two-day seminar. And it's like, I'm not gonna be able to afford doing that in this, unless I'm a company sponsoring me or something like that. But but for me, as an alumni, like, I feel like I have the experience and the knowledge, like, same thing, like knowledge and experience to give back, and also to connect them to sort of the real life scenarios, right? If you're thinking about these, if you're thinking about an idea, right? There's something that I can maybe add, or another alumni maybe able to add to ground that research or ground that idea and point you in a little bit of better direction than just to say, hey, let me think about this crazy thing just so I can graduate or be the only unique person in this, in this world with that idea. So for me, it's just, some kind of either life, I don't know how to describe it, like a lifelong learning, or just kind of a
student for life.
Returning, by you being there, because my class are all professionals again.
Right.
And so all of us are sort of realizing that, hey, we're missing something, or hey, we're needing something, and that's why we went back. And I don't think it necessarily has to, like, I would love to keep going back and getting more degrees if I had the time and the financial.
That's one of the questions I'd love to ask you guys is, when you think about the value of your degree, I mean, is it at its highest point when you graduate because it's freshest and you have the most cutting edge knowledge, and does it decline over time, or how does that work?
Depends on how you define the value of the degree.
Okay, so talk about that.
I mean, when you first graduate, you're fairly well connected. Things are, you're high potential. Your knowledge may not be as cutting edge as, depends on the field.
Right.
But, here, 10 years later, what's the value of my degree for me, considering I've had 2 careers in which I don't use any of my degrees.
Right.
It's my email address.
Okay.
So, and the friends that I made.
Right.
Just for pure personal reasons.
Right. Well, so that brings us to...
Could I
yes.
Use an example of something MIT did that was very good and is transformed and got useless because of years later?
Right.
I used to run the DC chapter of the MIT Enterprise Forum.
Right.
It was a very unique effort on the part of it was a selfless effort by MIT at the beginning to promote entrepreneurship and basically create chapters all over the country where people could learn about becoming an entrepreneur through example, and also but the people who were involved in each of the chapter's efforts was a mix of both MIT and non-MIT people.
Okay.
But the idea was it was a branding thing, and people would think out in the hinterland and things like that oh, MIT, they do neat things, they promote entrepreneurship and business and so forth.
Right.
That was the idea. And it went on very successfully for many years. Then what happened is suddenly somebody decided that no, this thing has to help us make money, right? And also it needs to be more MIT controlled from Central.
Right.
And so they put it under the auspices of the MIT Tech Review, which is basically a science publication that has really nothing to do with the institution, other than it writes about science and uses the name MIT.
Yeah.
And then they basically then And they completely changed the way
The idea. Yeah.
they worked with the chapters after that.
Yeah.
And now it's pretty much decimated.
And actually, the DC chapter disappeared for a while, and
Right.
it's been